Zach Benson has some of the best underlying stats in the National Hockey League. So, why isn't he a star yet? We'll get to the full scope on Zach Benson coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome into this Monday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast, and thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on our YouTube channel where you can watch the show. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're watching along there, and if you would like to become a part of our Locked On Sabres text club, you could do that by heading over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. We are through 2 games of the Stanley Cup final. We are into Game 3 tonight here on Monday night between the Oilers and the Panthers, and the series looks deadlocked. 1-1, of course, in the series. All the shot attempt numbers and the shooting numbers and everything is even. 3 overtime periods through 2 games also. So we are absolutely getting our money's worth for this series. But today, let's go through our next Sabre and our exit interview series. It's going to be Zach Benson. So that's coming up on today's show. What's going on with Benson's game, the numbers from this past season, what he should be doing this offseason, and whether there is still a star in there despite 2 years without big numbers. All that coming up. If you would like to also, today's episode of Locked On Sabres is presented by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here. Let's talk some Zach Benson. We're going to get right into it on today's show. No time to waste. Zach Benson, because he is one of my favorite Buffalo Sabres to watch ever, especially for somebody that doesn't put up extremely good numbers. Not yet. But it is an appreciation of how smart of a player he is and a bewilderment that he is able to have the impact that he does without having the necessary tools that it takes to be an NHL player yet at this age. He has done it. He's played 146 games because of his mind, not because of any physical skill set that he currently possesses. Get to why that, though, is the thing that needs to come through. The physical limitations need to go away for him to become that star level player. But before we do that, let's get into just the overall impact. Let's look back on the 2024-25 season for Zach Benson. His age 19 season, which is worth keeping in mind. He actually just turned 20 on May 12th. So this month, or last month, I should say. But he's coming up on his age 20-year-old season. So a very, very young player. For context, a lot of these guys that have come through for the Sabres, young players, did not make the NHL until they were, in Yuri Kulik's age, 20 years old. In JJ Peterka's case, 21 years old. These guys often haven't arrived by 18, 19, especially players who were drafted in the middle of the first round. Benson's played 2 seasons that you could argue we shouldn't have even seen yet. If the Sabres were a better built roster, 1, he has a tougher time making the team at all. 2, if you look at Benson and his mind, it's the only thing keeping him in the league. It's on another level. 99.9% of players with the skill set of Zach Benson have not played in the National Hockey League because of their own limitations. Coaching also matters to this, a willingness to let him be in the lineup, but there's a lot of hypotheticals to where he's not playing. And imagine that if he just hadn't played for the Sabres yet, and we were just talking about what he's done in juniors. Be very, very different sounding conversation. And it makes it more unique. It makes it a little bit more complicated, the fact that he has played this many games already at the NHL level. So this past season, 10 goals, 18 assists, 28 points in 75 games. That is actually a decline year over year in offensive statistics by 1. by 1 goal and by 1 assist. So it's basically the same. He went from 11 goals and 19 assists to 10 goals and 18 assists. But Certainly not what you would have liked to see. I would have loved to have seen a steady increase in goals and assists last year for Zach Benson. Maybe instead of 10 goals and 18 assists, if he had 19 goals and 30 assists, and we're talking about a 40-something point season, that feels more on track with a guy that's going to become a superstar player. But the fact that he didn't do that makes this a little bit more complicated, as I mentioned. And the reason for that is to really appreciate the true value of Zach Benson. You got to do one of two things. You either have to dive in deep into the film, have to pay attention to him during the games, during the season, even when he's away from the puck, really notice these little nuances to his game that are super impressive, or you need to go deeper into the numbers to see how the Sabres play when he's on the ice and what kind of impact he makes when he is out there. So, one, what do my eyes tell me? What my eyes tell me is that Zach Benson is a player that understands spacing on the ice as well as any player I've ever seen in the NHL, on par with the superstars of the league. Zach Benson has a mind for the game that is true of 30-plus-year-old veterans that have been in the league for a decade, and in some of those cases, he has even a better mind for the game. He very often is making the right decision. It doesn't always work out in his favor. Sometimes he is not strong enough or fast enough to make the play happen, but you better believe Zach Benson knows the play that needs to be made. You get very few turnovers, very few mistakes. It's what allows him to play in the penalty kill, play in defensive zone situations. He's a responsible defensive player. So when I watch Zach Benson and you watch him, remember there was a goal by Tage Thompson late in the year where against Boston, Benson had attracted the attention of two Boston Bruins in front of the net, and he got both of them to come over to him. The puck squirted free to Tage Thompson. Both Bruins defenders were preoccupied with Benson. Tage had a wide open goal to bury it. A play like that, in all the plays you've seen Zach Benson where he's along the boards or he's in front of the net and he wins a battle. Sure, there is a tenacity that is required of Benson to play the way he does. We see him after plays, right? In Detroit, when Bo Byram is getting mugged by an ECHL player, Bo Byram has a concussion history, and there's another Sabre that's getting attacked by the Red Wings. I got big 6'5" Mattias Samuelsson off to the side, not really realizing what's going on. Meanwhile, 5'9" Zach Benson is trying to move heaven and earth to get to his teammates to defend them. He's often in his opponent's face. He's dragging them to the penalty box along with him a lot, draws penalties. Benson has an edge. And yes, that's a big reason why he wins a lot of these battles. But I think the bigger reason is he is a step quicker to the right spot than his opponent is. And that's not because he's faster. It's because he realizes where he needs to go a third of a second, a half a second before the defender does. And that might not sound like a lot, but in hockey, when everything's moving that quickly, that third of a second is the difference between winning and losing a battle if you are giving up size, physicality, and speed to your opponent, which Zach Benson does. So that's what I see with my eyes. I also see a player that cannot shoot the puck for his life. Zach Benson, if there was, as much as he is the most impressive player, hockey IQ-wise, that maybe I've ever seen play in a Sabre uniform, as much as he is one of my favorite players to ever watch, this would be a good question for, Sabre historians too. But in my lifetime, in the last 25 to 30 years, I'm not going to lie, I don't think I've ever seen a Buffalo Sabre player that Zach Benson shoots harder than. Nobody. There's no player that's ever walked through those doors that I've ever seen shoot softer than Benson. He can't shoot at all. At all. There's no weight on his stick. He's trying to, but He's just not strong enough right now, and he doesn't have that natural shot, that torque that you get to whip a shot. I just don't see it from him. He also is one of the slowest players on the team. I think that improved a little bit as the season went on. He started to look a little bit faster to me at the end, but certainly one of the slowest players on the team. Those are the negatives that my eyes tell me. One stat to back up how bad Zach Benson's shot is. This is going to be a good stat and a bad stat for Zach Benson. It's a little bit of an indicator of what he could be, but it also teaches you what he needs to do. It's going to be an expected stats. Just, keep that in mind. Be ready for it. But I categorize the Sabres, the natural stat trick, on their individual expected goals, given where you get shots, where you get opportunities from on the ice, around the net, slot, close to the net in the low face-off circle. Add all that up. How many goals were you expected to score on the year? Now, 5-on-5, just to make it fair. Alex Tuch, number 1 on the team, 15 expected goals at 5-on-5. Tage Thompson, number 2, 14 expected goals at 5-on-5. Zach Benson, number 3. 12.7 individual expected goals. And then if I go down a couple more, Yuri Kulik, 12.5 individual expected goals. Peterka, 12.0. So 5 guys above 12. Tuch at 15, Thompson at 14, Benson, Kulik, and Peterka all at 12. Okay? All of them kind of pretty close to each other for how many goals you would expect them to score. That, to me, is a metric that shows how good are you at creating and getting to scoring opportunities. Now, compare that to how many goals you actually scored, and you have a better indicator of, okay, now how good of a finisher are you? Because Alex Tuch, 15 individual expected goals, scored 22. Pretty good finisher. Tage Thompson, individual expected goals 14, actually scored 33. Elite finisher. Yuri Kulik, expected is 12. Actual is 14. Good. Peterka, expected is 12. Actual is 18. Good. Zach Benson, the one that sticks out like a sore thumb from this group of 5. Expected goals for him at 5-on-5 was 12. He scored 6. While these other guys, in Thompson's case, he almost tripled what he was supposed to do. Tuch, not doubles, but, goes up by 50%. Kulik and Peterka both clear above average. Benson is half of what he should have. Half. And 6 goals might not sound like a lot, but hey, man, that could be the difference between 4. That could be the difference between 4 wins that you could have had. And 8 points in the standings, so that can go a long way in March and April, especially. So, Benson is getting opportunities. He's creating for others, but the goals aren't coming yet. I still want to say yet, though, because my hope is that they are going to come eventually. Now, the other numbers that are very positive in Benson's favor, the score when he was on the ice last year for the Buffalo Sabres at 5-on-5 was pretty close, 42-40. Now, this is going to be a lot to do with that last stat, though. The Sabres, when he's out there, though, are the better team. Even though it's only 42-40, expected goals 51-40. And again, a lot of that is Benson's not capitalizing on his opportunities, and that's a big part of this. Because when Benson's out there, the Sabres outshoot their opponent 436-355. Big gap. Outscoring chance, their opponent, 426-353. High danger chances when he's out there, 170-158. The Sabres are the better team when Zach Benson is out there all the time. And that's not with Tage Thompson, but most often. It's with Ryan McLeod. It's with Jason Zucker. It's with that second and third line. Usually he was on more often than he was on the top line. So I wouldn't just want to say, well, he played with Tuch and Thompson all season. That's not necessarily the case. So Greenway, too, a little bit at times. So they're the better team when he's out there. The results don't look as good as they probably should. And a lot of that probably has to do with his limitation. One other stat that I want to throw out there, and it's one that even I don't fully understand. In fact, I barely understand it at all, but I trust the guys over at Evolving Hockey, use them a lot. They have a stat that tries to try to isolate each player's individual contribution to their team in both offense and defense. So it's kind of like wins above replacement in baseball, or it's the closest thing to that. Even strength defense, EVD. It's one number. Try to signify how good are you isolated from everything else around you at defense. Zach Benson defensively, among all forwards in the NHL, on that number, was the 7th best defensive forward in hockey last year. The only players that were better, Alex Barkov, Logan O'Connor, Connor Garland, Anthony Cirelli, and then Sabre fans will love this. The top 2 in the league were former Sabres. Marcus Foligno, 2nd best defensive forward in the league. Sam Reinhart, best defensive forward in the league. So you do have a bunch of players above them, but let me do this real quick. Out of 599 forwards that qualified for this stat, he ranked number 7. So you have a very good defensive role. You have a very good defensive player, and that's at 19 years old. So there's a ways to go here, but I think the next question to really ask, and we'll get to this coming back after the break, is what's his next role? And will he be ready for something bigger? Get to that when we come back here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Because between dining out and online shopping and entertainment, for me, that's golf, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, stay on the same page without all the stress. You don't have to juggle a bunch of different apps to do all the same thing. You can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, plan long-term goals, all on one app to make it a lot easier. You budget smarter, you save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast talking about Zach Benson today, now 20 years old and still on his rookie contract. That'll be something to get to coming up in a moment here, though, is he only has one more year, and then we'll have to figure out a contract. And depending on how this season goes, that could look very, very different, depending on how it goes again. But that's kind of the intro to this question, which is, what's next for Zach Benson in 2025-26? What's the role? Where in the lineup should he play? And for me, he is going to be, I think, the most interesting player to watch for the Buffalo Sabres at training camp and in the preseason. More than any rookie, more than is Isak Rosen going to finally be able to make the NHL roster, more than is Noah Ostlund going to be ready to make the NHL roster? You know, some of these prospects, the question for them is often more about, well, are they good enough to make the team at all? For Benson, there's a big difference in what his role could be, depending on how he shows up. How big does he look? You know, he is listed at 170 pounds. What if he comes to camp 190? And it was 15, 20 pounds of muscle that he put on? If he's just ripped when he shows up? What if he works? I don't know what he's doing right now. In fact, I've tried to look at like social media stuff and I haven't seen. What is he doing in his off time right now? Is he working with a skating coach day in and day out? I mean, that's what I'd be doing if I were him. And what if he comes to camp and he's 20% faster than he was last season? Because if those two things look like they are there, and you in the shot too, right? Rasmus Dahlin improved his shot year over year over year. Owen Power has improved his shot year over year. If Benson comes back to camp and it looks like his shot is harder and he's scoring more in practice and he looks bigger and he looks faster, even if all of that is just, a little bit, just give me a little bit closer. Maybe he's 20% faster, 20% bigger, and 20%, shooting the puck better, scoring on, however many, what percentage, 20% is unfair for shooting. Maybe he's scoring on 5% more of his shots. If all that looks to be the case, I'm going to want Zach Benson in the top 6. Depends what else the Sabres do this offseason. If they go get a bunch of veterans and they land, some whale, then no thanks. I'll keep Benson on the third line. I don't know how likely the Sabres are to do that. If they don't, I'm going to want Benson in the top 6 if he comes to camp in preseason and showed that he has improved in all of those areas. But I think he has to improve in all of those areas, or it's just kind of a low event style of hockey for your most important lines that I don't think Lindy Ruff and the Sabres coaching staff are really going to be tempted to pursue. You want a guy that could score more and could put up the big numbers that's playing at the top of your lineup. And Benson's got to show an ability that's going to go up, even if it goes from a 28, 30-point guy in his first 2 years to a 50-point guy. There's got to be that jump, though, at least to that level, or he should stay on the third line for the foreseeable future until that happens. I don't want him out of my lineup because he makes too good of an impact defensively, but for him to be in a more offensive role, he's got to show that he's up to it. And then sky's the limit, I think, if he does that, because if you could get him better in all those areas and pair him with a Tage Thompson with his vision and his defensive play, I think that could really work. But you got to get those things to really happen for him. So is that realistic to expect? I'm hoping for it. It might be a little unrealistic to expect that he does all of those things just this offseason in a couple of months. So I'd expect some marginal improvement in all of those areas, but my guess is we are probably headed for a third year in a row where Zach Benson is more of a defensive player. He is a penalty killer. He's a responsible two-way guy in key situations late, and he's probably not playing in your top 6 if everybody's healthy. He's probably playing on your third line, I would think, for the third year in a row. If he does that, that contract's not going to be very big at all. It's going to be a bridge deal. It's going to be 2 years, a couple of $1 million, and that's probably about it. I'd like to see Benson earn a bigger contract. I'd like to see him show all those things. I'd like to see him score on more of his opportunities. I'd like to see him play in the top 6, and I'd like to see him get 50-plus points this season. And if he does that, I think 50 is really all I need to see. If he puts up 50-plus points, I'm going to think, okay, here we go. The rise has begun. And I don't think he's stopping at 50, 60 points. I think it could go higher than that. I don't know it could go much higher than 70 or 80, but I think that's in there. If he gives you 50, 60, he's the next guy I'd want to make a bet on. Arrow's trending up. I want to pay him now. After one big year and 2 good years before that, I'm ready to pay him a 6-year, 7-year contract extension at a lower cap hit than I'll have to pay in 2 years. A 50-plus point year, and I'm going to be willing to do that on Zach Benson. Not just because of the points, but because he's already giving me so much in all of these other areas. So, to come back, though, and wrap things up, is there still a superstar, a star in there in Zach Benson? Once ranked one of the best prospects in the world, after he made the Sabres especially, is he still a guy that has a really high ceiling? It's a little tougher to answer. We'll get to that when we come back. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Gametime. There is nothing like playoff hockey. You got the rivalries, you got the nonstop action with the Stanley Cup playoffs, getting going into the final. There's never been a better time to see it live, and Gametime makes getting in the building fast and affordable. Gametime gives you last-minute ticket deals, zone deals for deep discounts, panoramic seat views, and all-in pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ticket prices often will drop the closer you get to puck drop, so you could score big without overpaying. You could save big with zone deals. They pick the best seats at the lowest price for you. There's last minute deals. You could walk up. I had a game last year where I walked up to the building without tickets 10 minutes before puck drop, and I walked in and I was in my seats for the national anthem. Game time includes fees up front and backs every order with their ticket coverage guarantee, so they're not trying to hide these hidden fees from you until you get to the checkout screen. And if it'll cover cancellations, job loss, or even 24-hour returns for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We're talking Zach Benson. Is there still a star in there? And when I say star, I mean 80, 90, 100-point player, like a top-tier level forward. I want to believe the answer to that question is yes. I want to believe that, I watched back today in preparation for this part of the question. I watched 19-year-old Sam Reinhart highlights because it's not a perfect comparable. They're very different size-wise. I think Reinhart is about 3 inches taller than Zach Benson. Reinhart was drafted higher than Zach Benson was, 2nd overall versus 13th overall. Reinhart had bigger numbers in the WHL than Benson did, although Benson had some really good numbers there too. I went back though, but the reason I connect them is hockey IQ. That was the number one thing you heard about Sam Reinhart when he came into the draft as to why he went that high. It's the number one thing you hear about Zach Benson to this day. That's why he was drafted where he was and why he's had the success he has. Hockey IQ, outsmarting the opponent, quicker thinking to getting to a spot than the opponent. Reinhart. So I went back and I watched Sam Reinhart as a 19-year-old. He played 9 games for the Buffalo Sabres in that time. And couldn't watch like every one of those games. It was kind of tough to find, but watched back some of Sam Reinhart as a rookie. He had no goals and 1 assist. And only 3 shots on goal, by the way. A couple more shot attempts. Sam Reinhart at that point in time, it was better than Zach Benson's right now, but he did not appear to have much of a shot. Not much of one at all. He was definitely there because of his mind for the game. He had his success the following year, 23 goals and 19 assists, more so because of his mind for the game, scoring on a lot of deflections, scoring on a lot of front of the net type goals, which, by the way, are a lot of what Reinhart scored, or what Benson scored last year for the Buffalo Sabres. If you go back and look at Sam Reinhart's gel goal with the Buffalo Sabres, which you have to go all the way back to 2015 for. It's just him crashing the net and putting a puck along the ice and in. So he's not a guy that was walking down and sniping people like he is now. That's developed for him. And that's obviously developed to a level that I don't know that we could ever see it for Benson. But that's because Reinhart's scoring 57 goals last year and then 40 this year. Can Benson ever be a guy, though, that scores 25 to 30? Because Sam Reinhart didn't top 25 goals until his 8th year in the league. And that was when he first got to Florida. He never did it with Buffalo. And they scored 33, 31, and then 57 in his first 3 years with the Panthers. So never topped 25 until he was 25 years old. Didn't top 33 until he was 28 years old. Guys get stronger. You get your man strength. You learn a little bit more about the league. You work on your shot more and more and more over time, and it can improve. Look at Rasmus Dahlin, who couldn't hit a puck to save his life as an 18-year-old, and now he's a defenseman who could score 20. So I'm not saying Zach Benson's going to become Sam Reinhart, but I wouldn't be stunned. I wouldn't be stunned. I'd be stunned if he scored 57, but I wouldn't be stunned if he became a player as impactful as Sam Reinhart. I mean, hell, defensively, he's already almost there. And it's a slow start here for him offensively, but I'd like to believe that it could still be in there. Sam Reinhart's first year in the NHL, he scored 23 goals, 19 assists, had 42 points. he was 20. Would you take that for Zach Benson right now? 23 goals, 19 assists as a 20-year-old for 42 points. It's a little bit below that 50-point mark that I just mentioned, but I would take it. I would take it. How about his second year? In Sam Reinhart's second year, 21 years old, he had 17 goals, 30 assists for 47 points. Would you take that? I'm just saying, he doesn't have to become Sam Reinhart, but I wouldn't want to rule it out, because I think you've got a lot of the tools there mentally that you should give him some time, and hopefully he can get there. The Sabres' problem is they've got to make the playoffs right now, so I'm not ready to put him in the top 6, though, because if he's not ready for it, I've got to make the playoffs, and I'm not wasting any more time him playing on the first or the second line. He could play in the third line, if that's the case. Zach Benson, what's the ceiling? Good question for this that we asked a couple months ago. I'll refire this up. The most points you think Zach Benson will ever have in an NHL season? Get to that next time. We'll have some listener answers on that before we talk more about it. That'll do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We'll talk Ryan McLeod next time on the show. We'll talk some more about the Stanley Cup final and a couple of Sabre rumors that I've been hearing and seeing over the recent days. That's all going to be coming up on our next show. If you want more on the Stanley Cup final, be sure to check out Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until we get either Edmonton or Florida hoisting the cup here. You can check it out on Locked On NHL and YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll talk to you tomorrow here on Locked On Sabres, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.